Good morning. Welcome, media, NABOR members, and guests. I am Lauren Mello, President of NABOR and the Chairman of Media Relations Committee. I have the honor today of hosting the release of the 2019 year-end Naples Area Real Estate Market Statistics. I would like to welcome you and thank you for attending. Since we are live streaming the conference today, I would also like to welcome and thank all the viewers who are watching the conference on the internet. I am very pleased to report that we have positive news to share with you today regarding the emerging trends in real estate based on the Southwest Florida MLS statistics compiled from the 2019 activity. The panelists who will be presenting the market statistics and trends today are Mike Hughes, who will be presenting pending sales, Adam Villano, who will be presenting closed sales, Jeff Jones, who will be presenting median closed prices, inventory, and days on market. It is now my pleasure to begin today's presentation of the 2019 year-end Naples Area Real Estate Market Statistics and Trends. We will begin with pending sales with Mike Hughes.
Thanks, Lauren. Let me make sure we've got everything dialed in here. Okay. Well, about a year ago, I was up here and I had announced that it was going to be my last media press conference because the lotto was up to 800 million and a group of us had purchased 750 tickets, and I was sure that we had a winner in there. Well, I'm back. This is actually kind of interesting. Out of 750 tickets, I had one ticket that had two numbers. So I beat the odds, so to speak. This year, a lot of realtors hit the lotto. We had a record year for pending sales, and that's, I think we've been tracking these numbers since 2007. There's a decent chance that 2005 was maybe better, don't know. And how this all came about, you know, if you all go back in time to the bubble years, 04 and 05, the numbers were off the chart. A lot of flipping back then, et cetera. And then we had the downturn in 06, and in 07, a group of us at NABOR got together and said, you know, we need to really put out the NABOR numbers so that the consumer can digest what's going on with the market. And so we started this in 2007 and started doing the quarterly press event a couple years later. And so what the goal is to get accurate information out to you all, the members, and also out to the consumer, because many of the buyers and sellers and renters are making decisions off of the numbers that we release. So this year, 12,604 pending sales. First time we've ever hit 12,000 pending sales. So big number. Last year, if you're curious how we did in 2018, we had 11,520 pending sales. There's a very interesting trend that jumped out at me last night when I was going through the numbers. And it's something that is pretty important, and I wish I'd had a slide on it, but I'll read it to you and kind of, hopefully I can get this across to you. In 2018, if we went quarter by quarter by quarter, in the first quarter we had 3,670 pending sales. Then in the second quarter, 3,200 pending sales. In the third quarter, we had 2,384 pending sales. And then in the fourth quarter, we went down to 2,266. So every quarter got lower and lower and lower. In 2019, giving you the numbers by quarter, overall, we had 3,729 pending sales. The season, Christmas to Easter, the season typically is when we see the bulk of the activity. In the second quarter, we had 3,452 pending sales. And then we dipped down to 2,615 in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, we jumped to 2,808 pending sales. Now, here's the trend, what's interesting. When you compare the quarters, 2018 first quarter to the 2019 first quarter, we were up slightly in 2019. We're up 1.6%. So not enough to get excited about. Second quarter, when you compare second quarter 18 versus 19, we were up 7.9%. In the third quarter, we jumped to 9.7% up. Fourth quarter, up 23.9%. And a lot of that was in December. And one of the things that I get asked all the time when we get to the end of the year is, what do you think about the next year? And any comment you give, you're kind of guessing. But we're all looking for trend lines. We're looking for what do we see that's building up momentum. And so certainly that trend line is very positive. And if you look at, hold on one sec. If you look at the month of December, you see we had 817 pending sales overall versus 676 the December before. That was a 21% increase just in the month of December. So very, very positive news there. I mean, we're very encouraged by that. If you break it down between single family and the condo pending sales, in single family, looking at 2019 versus 2018, we're up 11.2%. Single family outperformed condos for 2019 for pending sales. In 2018, we had 5,670 single family pending sales. In 2019, we jumped to 6,305 pending sales. So overall, up 11.2%. With condos, we were up 7.7%. Still not bad. It did not do as well as single family, but still up 7.7% is pretty significant. One very important point with respect to pending sales, for those of you that have been doing this a long time, when we had that bubble, 04 and 05, and then we went into 06, in 06, you had a lot of pending sales that weren't closing. Not seeing that now. They're closing. Every now and then you'll get a financing issue or possibly an appraisal issue, but the vast majority of the pending sales are closing, so that's very encouraging. So far, it looks like that momentum from December is rolling into January. I mean, January's not over yet, but I think the mood of the NABOR Media Relations Committee is that we are cautiously optimistic as we head into this new year. So, Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker is going to cover closed sales, and it's Adam Villano.
Good morning. Thank you for everybody coming today. I actually missed the meeting yesterday, so I drew the short straw, but the easiest, because closed sales are pretty easy to sum up. So Mike actually said something, and it dawned on me, and I wrote a little note down here that he mentioned closed sales in 2005. And some of us has been doing this a long time, and it just kind of reminded me that, wow, that's 15 years ago now. It's a long time. And it's been a while since we've seen progression in the market like we have. So to sum up, 2019 was a strong year for sales in the Naples market. In fact, in two categories, it was the best we've had in 10 years. Units sold in, hold on, I'm being cued. My mic's not loud enough. 2019, Units sold was 10,242 units. You'll see there, nice increase over 2018. Our total dollar volume was $6,075,121,408. What's interesting about this was how we started the year off. We meet in media relations once a month, and I believe, if my memory serves me right, January we looked at the numbers and we were down approximately 20%, and a lot of us believed it was just a weird trend. And what we realized quickly was it was. And what's interesting about the unit numbers for 2019, we finished off the first quarter of 2019 with 2,188 units. Second quarter was 3,282 units. The third quarter was 2,369 units. The fourth quarter was 2,403 units. Now, I'm spitting out numbers, and I know you're all thinking, why is he spitting numbers? What's interesting about this is we've always considered Naples a seasonal market. Our lowest unit count for closed sales was in the first quarter last year, which is a definite change in what we've seen in years past. Interesting note, decline in inventory was pretty dramatic this year. What we also saw was a lot of price decreases. So price adjustments, what we saw in the beginning of January and what progressed throughout the year was the sellers sort of coming to the buyers. And you saw price decreases, and you saw the inventory sort of fall off the market and not be replaced by new inventory. With a decline in inventory due to heavy sales volume, the average price was down about 3.1%. It created the perfect market conditions for buyers and sellers. The data shows the market in the Naples area is continuing to move away from being a seasonal market, as our strongest quarters were quarters 2 and 3. We head into 2020 with very similar market trends, and we expect to see strong sales throughout the 2020 season. Thank you.
To state the obvious, you will see a lot of this mic back and forth. I am vertically challenged, and my panelists are not.
Hey,
so I apologize for all this
Can I say one
noise.
thing? And just a reminder that all these stats are available at NABOR.com. And if you haven't looked into the new feature that we launched last year through the MLS called InfoSparks, look at it. It is the most amazing tool that we launched last year. You can dive into each community and look at showings per listing, showings per pending. You can really extract a ton of data from there, and it's all there available for you at your fingertips.
Thank you, Adam. Our next panelist is Jeff Jones, and he will be covering median close price, inventory, and days on market.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming. So Adam said that he missed the meeting and got closed sales, but I was sitting at the end of the line when they were handing out assignments. So they said, okay, Jones, you got overall median price, you got inventory, and you got days on market. So I'm going to sit differently next time, but anyhow, I'm happy to be here and be able to present this to you. We have more good news when it comes to pricing, and that is that even though we had record sales, and we'll talk about a significant drop in inventory, prices remain very, very stable. Overall, down 1.6%, single family down 2.4%, and finally condominiums down 1.9%. So we had really the best of all worlds. We had stable pricing, we had lower but still plenty of inventory, and we had the new construction market, which kind of filled in the gaps where we had resale shortages. So it's a great market. It's a great time to be a realtor, and it's an even better time to be a buyer and a seller. So good news for the Naples market. Interestingly enough, also to be mentioned in here, beginning in January, we saw a market shift. The high end of the market, above 1 million, was driving the market for the last couple of years, the majority of the increases and everything. And then we shifted back beginning and really starting in January, where we saw
the results shift a little bit. We went back to what is really our more traditional market, which is the 300,000 to 500,000 market. And actually still there's quite a few units under 300,000 available in our market as we speak. So looking at the median price over 300,000, we also have good news. A lot of times the overall mix of median price changes this a little bit, but not really. Down 3% overall, down 2.6% for single family, and 4.4% for condos. So what that means is prices are very stable. We've shifted in the market to more units in the 300,000 to 500,000 range, but overall the prices we haven't had any upward pressure on pricing. Inventory is really, normally when you see this kind of a drop in inventory, you see an increase in prices. But because of the number of choices, because of the new construction market, again, we had a very healthy drop in inventory, down 20.6%, almost 21% overall, 23% in the single-family home market, and 18% in condos. So translating that's 6.3 months of supply overall, 6.2 months of supply for single-family, and 6.4 months of supply for condos. Overall, our market's very well balanced. I think everybody thinks single-family homes dominate, but if you take a look at the number of units sold over a period of time, we're about a 50-50 balance. So we had a lot of drop in inventory. That fueled, obviously, record sales and record pendings, and that's a good news story as we go in with momentum to the next year. So if we take a look over at the past 10 years at our months of inventory, you can see that we started back in the first part of our decade with 16 months of supply, and that gradually trended down to what was our best prior year, 2015, going into 2016, and then we saw a pretty good rise in inventory. In 2016 was an election year, and we saw some changes in the market, and now we've come back down to a very healthy 6 months of supply. And it's interesting that 6 months of supply by many standards is considered a balanced market. It's not a buyer's market, not a seller's market. We tend to have a little bit more seasonality, and that may skew that a little bit, but I think as Mike and Adam pointed out, we're becoming much less of a year-round seasonal market and more of a year-round market. So 6 months of supply is very good when you consider for single-family homes around the state, it's 3.5 months of supply, and for condos, it's 5.4 months of supply. So even though our inventory supply has come down, the number of units have come down, we still have healthy choices for all of our buyers, whether they be condo or single-family homes. We'll talk a little bit about days on market. Again, the seasonality factor has a little bit to do with the fact that our days on market is probably higher than other markets in the state, but it's fairly well standard between 95 and 100. This shows a 6% increase overall, an 8% for single family and about a 5% for condominiums. One of the things that's really interesting to talk about that we've seen, and we'll talk about a little bit in the Q&A, is we've had a very steady number of price reductions this year. And the price reductions have kind of averaged over the last few months, and we tracked them to be about 25% of all the active listings on the market. So people realizing that they need to be competitive if they want to sell, 25% of them have decided pretty much every month that I need to reduce my price to be more competitive. And what's the result of that? More competitive pricing, more sales, and more pendings. So it's good news. Thank you. I won't sit at the end of the line again.
Thank you, Jeff. As we move into the Q&A section of our conference, if you have questions and you would like us to address those questions, raise your hand and Marsha will bring you a card to write your question down, and we will collect the cards. I have prepared several questions for the panelists. to answer regarding trends in the real estate market. We will begin with the first question, which is, how was real estate activity in 2019 different from the activity in the 2018 market? Who would like to take it? Sure.
Okay. I think what we saw this year was very interesting because there was no lack of buyers. But I guess if you ask any of you that show homes, you would say that there seemed to be a little less urgency. But yet they were real buyers. And what they did was wait out the market a little bit till the sellers sort of adjusted their price downward. And when the sellers did adjust their price downward, they were quick to jump on and purchase. And it was a very healthy market because once sellers realized they needed to come down a little bit, the buyers were snatching up stuff. And I think that's what you also see when you look at the days on the market, and Jeff and I have looked at it many times, is if you actually break down the days of the market, what you'll see is there's a fair amount of inventory that's 180 days old or 300 days old. And what it is stuff that hasn't been updated or it hasn't been adjusted in price. And that's what's keeping that days on the market a little higher than we would probably normally see. Because if you have a good listing and you price it right, I would bet a lot of you are seeing it sell quickly and getting a lot of showings and a lot of offers. So
Now that we're tracking showings every month, we're seeing a great increase in showings. We are seeing more showings per listing and more showings per pending. So there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of buyers in the market, but there's also a lot of choices. So on average, when a seller gets 1 or 2 showings, they figure, well, I should get an offer, right? But now we're seeing that track up to 4 to 6 showings per pending. So if you're a listing agent, you might want to take a look at that number and counsel with your seller a little bit to keep them calm.
Mike?
Yeah, I wrote down a couple things here. Interesting statistic. In the month of December, there were 1,678 price changes. 92.4% were decreases. So you had roughly almost a third of the inventory reducing their price. And yeah, that's a big number to start with, that there's that many price decreases. But what strikes me is, and I'm kind of an old timer, in the old days, a lot of people would list their property for season, and once they got a little closer to Easter, then they'd start thinking about lowering their price. They're starting in December. So think about this. If you're trying to get a FSBO to list with you, how can a for sale by owner possibly keep track of what's going on in the market? You have this at your fingertips where you can see how many price changes are happening. They're going in the dark. And so if you're trying to sell yourself on why you should list with me, and this is something, they are at a disadvantage, a FSBO, because they can't keep track of what the competition is doing. So that gives you a big advantage. And that's something I'm sure you'll exploit or use to your advantage, let's put it that way. Better way of wording it. The thing that kind of jumped at me early on, and I think Adam touched on it, is that when we started 2019, January and February were soft. And when the brokers start talking to each other, wanting to know, what are you seeing? I mean, we were trying to figure out what is going on. And then in March, we came way back. So as Adam said earlier, buyers didn't feel that sense of urgency. They were looking around. And when they got to getting closer to Easter, then they were all making a lot of decisions. So that jumped out at me, that we started the year slow and we ended strong in December. December was a very strong month for real estate. The other thing that jumped out at me is, I can't prove it, But my sense is that our summer was impacted in 2019 negatively by the summer before, which had that very strong red tide. Because I really believe a lot of the annual visitors that come in the summer that came in 2018, they saw a very strong red tide, which was very unusual. I mean, being honest, red tide, from what I hear, has been around for over 200 years. But each year it's different. And for some reason, I don't know what the factors were, 18 was a very strong year. 19, fortunately, was not as strong as 18. So I think that maybe that bodes well for the summer of 2020. We'll see.
Thank you, Mike. Our second question, where did the bulk of real estate activity take place? Jeff?
Clearly under 1 million. That was what we did. We saw a big shift from the high end of the market driving the bus to, as we started to see in January and February, we started to see the major increases in unit sales in the 300,000 to 500,000 price range. And also the under 300 was very active. So we saw buyers coming back and looking a little differently at the market. We saw price decreases in those segments that Mike talked about. Sometimes as many as 25 or 30% of that inventory per month was being reduced. So that stimulated a lot of buying activity in the under 1 million category.
Adam?
I would absolutely concur. The 300 to 500 was probably the biggest increase, 0 to 300, which we all know there's not a lot of. The good thing about that is the 1 to 2 million pretty much stayed flat, and the year before was a good, strong market for the luxury market, and the 2 million plus was pretty flat. So, maybe down a little bit, but overall, we're still seeing that luxury market continue to prop us up. And, the lower end, we say lower end, 300 to 500, right? The lower end had a very big increase. Obviously, North Naples, you had a lot of new construction in South Naples, and a lot of communities wrapping up their sales. So it was a good year.
Mike?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of them. That range 300 to 500 seems to be a sweet spot for a lot of different types of buyers. The builders are rushing to fill that need in that price range. If you think about it, it's pretty hard for them to get below 300 because of the price of land. So, that 300 to 500 ends up being our low market, which sounds funny because 300 to 500,000 is a lot of money. New construction continues to be very strong. It's kind of hard to track how much new construction is going on in the area. Privately, a lot of us talk to each other, and my sense is that for many brokerage firms, that new construction number is probably north of 20%. There's a lot of activity that's happening, and I think the new construction is actually holding down resale pricing because with the inventory, it's not a low inventory number, but it's a little bit on the low end. And so under supply and demand, why aren't prices climbing faster? And I think it's the new construction that's holding it down a bit. Give you an idea, inventory where we're at. Jeff reported that we had roughly 5,400 units at the end of December. In March of 2007, there was 12,440 properties for sale. So that's a big drop. But I also remember some years later, after 2007, we dipped down we got into the 3,000 number. So we've inched up from then, and one thing's kind of interesting, and I briefly brought up 2005, Adam mentioned it. In 2005, we had a real low inventory, but all these properties were flipping. Some properties were selling 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a year. And every time it was going up 25 grand, 30, I mean, it was kind of unbelievable. what we have in 2019, we had a very normal kind of rolling inventory where properties were selling and every month new inventory was coming on. And so that's another reason why to use you guys, because every month new inventory is coming on the market. If a buyer's trying to go online and do their own research, I really think they're a little bit, I mean, it certainly helps, but I think you guys are the ones that are knowledgeable with the latest data. And so I think there's a really strong advantage nowadays to use the membership here. And all in all, it was, as we said earlier, it was a good year for real estate.
Thank you. Adam?
I just wanted to add that when we say that there's price decreases, it's not troublesome price decreases. It's not the 2006, 7, and 8 price decreases that we had where people were dropping the price because there were no buyers. We probably had some sellers that felt, we saw this trend where the market was going up, and maybe we had some sellers that were a little greedy or a little aggressive with their original list price, and all of those price increases did was actually bring it down to market. There's a plenty of equity in our market. We don't have any bad paper like we had in 2005 or 6, and these price decreases are not dropping below what the market is. They're just coming back to the market. So just wanted to point that out.
Jeff?
My apologies. I'd just like to go back to the first question. Mike talked a little bit about the red tide. Obviously, 2018 was a wake-up call for all of our water quality issues. Between the algae and the red tide, fortunately, we didn't have the blue-green algae problems in Collier that were experienced up north. But I want to let you know that we mobilized. Thanks to Adam and Corey McCloskey, we formed a task force here to take a look at water quality, put a newsletter out pretty much quarterly to everybody, talking about what's being done. And although it doesn't seem like a lot's being done, we had $600 million committed in the legislature last year to start taking action on a lot of the projects that had been on hold. The Corps of Engineers actually worked this year to lower the lake levels, so the discharges were down and the algae blooms on the Caloosahatchee and other areas were way down. We saw the potential effect on our market of bad water quality, and we acted, and we're continuing to act, and we're continuing to advocate locally at the state level, and I think we just got $200 million from Congress to work on Lake Okeechobee. So there's a lot of things happening, and I think we just bought 20,000 acres, so they couldn't be developed. So just wanted to mention to you that this is at the heart of what we're trying to do as realtors, is make sure water quality is aware and that we're solving these problems so that we don't have an impact on our tourism industry and our long-term property values. Sorry for going out of turn there.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next question, were there any surprises in the housing market in 2019? Mike?
Yeah, I had mentioned some of these earlier, so I apologize if I repeat myself once or twice, but certainly the December surge in pending sales was much higher than we thought would happen. I mean, it was a very good month to end the year on. I do continue to see South American buyers on the West Coast. And I think that's a relatively new thing because some have found us, but it seems like a lot of the activity coming below us was gravitating towards the East Coast, and it's awesome seeing them now see what the West Coast is like. So, I mean, that's, from a marketing standpoint, I now see agents marketing to some of the countries below us, not across the Atlantic Ocean. One of the things that I keep looking at and trying to figure out what the impact is going to be on real estate is the stock market. You've got a record stock market that's performing out there, and one of the immediate results that I think we're seeing is you're getting more people financing that could go all cash but they don't want to pull the money out of the stock market when it's producing those kind of returns. So the stock market, to me, is interesting. It cuts both ways. I mean, sometimes I argue it's good for us, sometimes I say it works against us. Depending on how the election goes at the end of the year, there's always a chance that some money could flow out of the market as people cash in some of those profits. Where do you think that money's going to go? It's probably going to roll into real estate. One of the things that we saw with the last election, 2016, we saw sales drop off that year. And it was a noticeable drop. But I think, and this is my take on it, I think that in 2016 there was a shock value. Every day we were waking up, turning on the newspaper or jumping on our iPhone and pulling up the news. And the negative campaigning, that's something our country really hadn't been through. I think now we're used to it. So I really don't see that shock value hitting in this press in this year when we're selling. I don't think it's going to have the same kind of impact as it did in 2016. It was the price reductions coming earlier is one of the things that I still think is very important to sellers. They need to realize what the competition is doing. And as you get those listings and you do your comps and you price it just right, it puts another burden on you because the market's shifting. And so if the comps that you use, if they're all lowering their price and your house is staying firm on where it's at, all of a sudden your house that was priced right might all of a sudden be priced out of the market. So it's important to use that when you're talking with the seller and keeping them abreast on what's happening in the market. I mean, more and more I feel the value of the realtor community is bubbling to the top. This is a time where both buyers and sellers need to use someone that's informed with what's going on in the market.
Thank you, Mike. Adam?
I would probably have to go back to the luxury market and what people are doing in it.
No.
Is the light on? I can't believe you cut Adam off.
I know. I know.
Go up to the mic, maybe. Okay, well, I actually would like to ask our moderator, whose business specialty is foreclosed properties and bank-owned properties. What did you see happening? There was a few articles that floated out that maybe we'll see an increase in distressed properties or foreclosures because of a lot of the mortgage modifications weren't working. And I'd just like for you to comment on that, if you would, see what you think.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. What I observed is the last quarter of 2019, there was a slight uptick in broker price opinion request, which is typically how the servicers and the investors determine values on properties. This is not anything for us to be concerned about. It was a very small percentage. It wasn't what we observed in 2008, 2009. The other thing that I observed was an uptick in HELOCs, your home equity lines of credit. It was a combination of cash buyers who were going back and pulling equity out of their homes, and in my opinion, was a great sign that where we've come from 2008 and 2009, how much the property values have increased over the last couple of years, and everyone has the equity that they can actually go in and pull out of their property. So there wasn't anything, I would say, really alarming in terms of the foreclosure side. It was a slight surge in the fourth quarter of 2019. As January has taken off, the numbers are down again in requests. So I wouldn't say it's anything for us to be alarmed about for 2020.
Adam's.
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready, Adam?
I would say that my two biggest surprises were we had, if you go down to the beach, I think we had a sale in 2018 for 48 million that broke the record, and they tore it down. And then somebody bought a house next door or down the street for 28 million and tore it down. So, I mean, I guess I'm kind of surprised you'd pay 48 million and then tear it down, but good sign for our market. I think it shows where we are. I definitely think we're starting to go into, we have the luxury market. We are starting to see more people that live here. I feel like the tax changes in New York and California. I just read an article. U-Haul just came out with some stats. Said they have more U-Hauls coming to Florida than any other state, and that was the first time. It used to be Texas. A lot of people with technology are able to work remotely, and you're starting to see more people moving here full time. So you got the luxury market, you have your full-time residents, and then you have the people that are coming and going, and it really is three different markets, and you really need to make yourself aware of what market you're selling in and understand the consequences for all.
Thank you, Adam. Jeff?
Same mic, different guy. There you go. I think the interesting thing is this is the third or fourth year where we've been voted the best place to live and the best place to retire. That's great PR to send out for your marketing. The quality of life here is good. Growth is well managed. We're one of the lowest tax counties in the whole state. So there's a lot of reasons why people are taking a look at Naples. And hopefully the inventory will remain. The new construction seems to be balancing the entire market. So I think we're continuing to see the results of all the quality of life issues, including water quality that we're working on. And it showed up in our sales this year.
Thank you, Jeff. Mike?
One other note that I think is relevant, and that is several years ago it was reported that the in-migration into Florida had slowed down quite a bit, and now it's picked up. And if you think about the people that are flowing into the state, a lot of them don't stop at Jacksonville. It still gets cold in Jacksonville. And so you really have to get below Tampa to get to that warmer weather. So with an aging baby boomer population and where we're located, I think we're in the catbird seat. I think we're positioned perfect for the next 10 years. And I suspect that migration into Florida will continue to grow. A lot of us have been over the East Coast, and it's pretty congested over there. The West Coast is really the last frontier. So I'm pretty excited about the coming years.
Thank you. I would like to circle back about Adam's comment with those two top sales that we had in our area. I fielded some questions from media about that. They were questioning, is that showing because the highest sale that was 48 million and then the next highest sale was 28, was that an indication of where our market was headed? And you are all very savvy. Those two properties in comparison, the property that sold for 48 million was right on the beach in Port Royal. The acreage was 5-6 acres. It had a guest house, and the property that sold at 28 million, that property was more in Port Royal, but on the Intercoastal Waterway. It did not have beach access, and it was a much smaller lot. So there were significant differences and criteria that obviously dictated the market price. So I just want you all to understand on those two sales. Okay, our last question we have, what advice can you give home buyers or sellers? Okay, let's start with Jeff and we'll work our way back.
Okay, all right. Well, the advice that I would like to give you this morning is really use a realtor. Our market is so neighborhood specific. You can be working in one market, you can go across the street and down a quarter of a mile and find entirely different absorption, find entirely different pricing. And for someone coming into our market, All of Naples is considered our market, so you can be 30 miles out east and have a nice waterfront property, or you can be right on the beach. So I think the advantage is that our realtors know the market, they know the neighborhoods that they're working in, and they can give buyers and sellers the very best advice to help them accomplish their objectives.
Thank you, Jeff. Adam?
Use that one.
I
There you go.
Good. Okay. I think it's important that you start to use the technology that we provide. The InfoSparks program really allows you to dive into communities. You can educate sellers on how many showings, particularly for a property to go pending. And what we've really realized, and we do this once a month, we sit in a room and we break down the numbers and we look at it, and what you realize is there could be a community here that's selling fast, and that same community or a different community next door where inventory is sitting. And I think it's important to use the tools and educate the buyers about their community and make sure prices are set accordingly. I think too many people are setting, unrealistic sales price or listing prices, and that's just creating more time in the market. So do the research, use the tools we provide them as much data as possible. You can walk into any listing now and say the average home in Gray Oaks takes 9 showings to go pending. That's technology we didn't have before. That's data we didn't have before. That's going to set the proper expectations for you and for the buyer and seller. They're going to understand that, hey, it's going to take a little bit of work for me to sell my house. And if you go with, I'm a big believer in expectations. If you set the proper expectations up front, the transaction will go much smoother.
Thank you. Mike?
In looking at the buyers, with a somewhat low inventory, my advice to a buyer is if you see something you like, move quickly. Because the reality is if you like it, someone else likes it also. And I can't tell you how often I see someone that likes a home and then they call me up as broker of my firm and they say, I'm really upset with your realtor. I mean, I looked at a house 2 weeks ago and now I'm ready to put an offer in and it's under contract. Well, they need to understand what's going on with the market, particularly in that lower price range. Those properties move very quickly. So if you see something you like, I don't think time is your friend. It's something that you need to think about. In 2007, that was a very good year for lowball offers. This is 2019. So the person that's out there that's trying to steal a home with a lowball offer, in all likelihood, there's a good chance there's another offer coming in while they're fooling around with that lowball offer. Can a lowball offer work? Possibly. Not in this market, it's a lot harder than it was many years ago. So I think they have to be realistic with that first offer if they really want to have a shot at the home. The other thing that, and I'm probably putting my broker hat on for this one, I strongly recommend that any buyer get all inspections. I mean, let's face it, 2017 we had a hurricane that went right over top of us. Why someone would want to try to save $500 and not get a roof inspection is beyond me. And so I think inspections are very important because if you're going to put that kind of outlay of cash, you need to know what you're getting into. And a lot of times things are not readily noticeable. And also if you think of some of the owners we have in the area, when they fill out that seller's disclosure statement, a lot of them have never lived in the home. So they can't disclose what they don't know about. So, I mean, it's pretty foolish to try to skip inspections thinking that you visually looked at it and you think you know what's going on. Strongly recommend the inspections. The other thing is if you're working with a buyer and the buyer looks at things and they can't really find that property that really is what they're looking for, keep working with them, because you should convey to the buyer that this is a rolling inventory. Every month we have new product coming on the market. So if they don't see what they like now, it could easily change within 30 days. You never know. That's pretty much what I have with buyers. With sellers, price it right. I mean, really, if you want to shoot for the moon with that real high price, then you ought to have a strategy in place where if you don't get showings or offers, then there ought to be a program in place where after a certain period of time, you'll lower that price, maybe in increments, until you start getting activity. So very important that sellers price it correctly. You've got the Zestimate out there. Okay, that's one source, but there's so many different sources on how to price that home. The best source is you guys. You guys know the market. You know the neighborhoods, and you should be number one as far as their best resource on how to price the property. And you also stay on top of the market. You know that the market's ever changing. And so building that relationship up with your seller, that listing that you just got, constantly giving them feedback is crucial. And I'd say the number one complaint that I see out there from sellers that want to terminate a listing or withdraw it, the number one complaint I get is communication. It's very important when you get that listing that you have an understanding with that seller on how often they want to be communicated with and in what manner. Millennials might want to be communicated much differently than baby boomers. So, and sometimes I know the feeling of if you've had nothing go on in the past week, I really don't want to call that seller and say that there's been no showings, there's been no offers. But the reality is that might be the most valuable piece of information you give them. That might help with that price decrease. I mean, if you keep quiet on it, then all of a sudden they're kind of in the dark. So that communication with the seller is crucial to pricing that listing right and keeping the listing. So,
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we will move on to some of the questions. I would like to get us wrapped up pretty soon. One of the questions, and I think, Mike, you may have mentioned this, about our seasonal market and you feeling that we're kind of trending away from that seasonal market. Who would like to field that question first? Adam?
I think what you're seeing with the numbers is it absolutely is less seasonal. I think January, you're seeing a lot of people, and we talk to agents, we talk to each other. Showings go up. Agents are showing a lot of property because they want to see what's out there. And the buyers but they're not really ready. And then you start to get into February and people start to pull the trigger a little bit more. And the sellers really tend not to be ready in January. It's early in the season. I don't want to tie my property up. But what we're starting to see is more people coming back in April and May and June and July just on buying trips. They'll rent in season, they'll look around and try to feel the communities, and then they come back in and are dedicated on those trips to buying. And it's an absolute trend that's not going away. You're going to see, I believe, the summers get busier down here. You're going to see more people stay longer. It's just the direction we're going in.
Thank you, Adam. Jeff?
I think the three-letter word TAX has an awful lot to do with what's happening in our community. Many of the northern states have taxed themselves really to the point of people saying, is it worth it for me to stay here? Another thing that I see that's coming in is that we have a lot of people coming here from California. So I think we are becoming a great place to live. We have the climate, we have a low tax base, we have no income, state income tax, and all of these factors are helping to drive people here and to drive them here year round.
Mike?
I used to do a lot of building up in the Punta Gorda area. And one thing I've noticed as I monitor the whole west coast of Florida is Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, that area has not come back the way this area has. And I believe that one of the strong reasons why we're doing well versus some of the other areas is that we have jobs. We have good jobs. And you don't have that everywhere around the state of Florida. And so a lot of people that are coming up on retirement, they need to supplement their resources, and they do that by getting a part-time job. And so the job factor in anywhere from Fort Myers all the way down to Marco, I think is something that's really helping us. And I also see more end users now. You know, there were years where we had a ton of investor activity. Now you're seeing more end users, and I think that bodes very well. I mean, you like to see people that are buying a property and staying into the community and becoming part of the fabric. I do a lot of traveling around the state, and wherever I look, I keep saying the same thing to myself. It's nice, but it's not Naples. We're spoiled. I mean, literally, when you look at everything we have, we're all geniuses. Somehow we picked the right place to live, and unfortunately, in some respects, unfortunately, that secret's gotten out, but now that we're in real estate, I'm glad it's gotten out. I mean, we live in a great area.
Thank you, Mike. To be considerate of everyone's time, we have a few other questions that we do not have time to get to. The people that wrote these questions, if you please come up after and feel free to ask our panelists today and get answers. We would really appreciate that. As Adam had mentioned, the 2019 annual statistics and infographics are posted on NABOR.com and NaplesArea.com under the Market Statistics tab. You will find December's date there too. Feel free to share this valuable information with your customers and associates. It is a great member benefit for you all. In closing, I'm happy to announce that NABOR is holding our annual Economic Summit on Tuesday, April 21st at the Naples Hilton from 2 to 4:30. We have a great lineup of speakers this year. Our keynote speaker is a very popular Dr. Elliot Eisenberg, the internationally acclaimed economist and public speaker specializing in making economics fun. He will be speaking about the magnitude of the next recession. We also have Chief Economist at Florida Realtors, Dr. Brad O'Connor, who will be providing valuable information about the Florida economy and its effects on the housing market. For everyone who has an interest in Naples home values, we have Cindy Carroll, Vice President of the Residential Division, Carroll & Carroll Appraisers and Consultants, who will be speaking about Naples home values and trends. The cost is $40, which includes the reception from 4:30 to 5:30. We are offering special VIP seating if you register early by February 29th. Be sure to register early because this popular event always sells out. We hope to see you there. That concludes the annual Naples Real Estate Market Conference. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day.